Alright, Mom. I'm going to be teaching you Python through this. And it's only going to be 10 minutes. So, yeah. I'm starting the timer now. Alright, 10 minutes and counting. What are we going to learn about today? Variables. Alright, there's 5 types of variables. There is a list, string, int, or integer, and boolean, and there is a dictionary. A list is a combination of strings, ints, and booleans. A string is characters. An int is numbers. A boolean is numbers with decimals. I know I spelled that wrong, but I don't care. And a dictionary is complicated. That's why we're going to go over it in the next video. So we're gonna get rid of this one here. There we go. So now we're just going to go over the 4. So first, let's do strings. So a string, you can name the variable anything. So like maybe I would name it name, and then you can set it equal to anything you want, and it has to be in quotes if it's a string. Oh, my bad. I have to end the multi-line comment. So now names, that's the name of the variable. I'm naming it name, equals, and when it's in quotes, it is a string, like this. So we can print the name, which prints the variable. So this goes to here, which prints that. So then it'll show up as Alex. And there's that. So let's say we don't want it to be let's just name the variable. So let's say we don't want it to be a string. How do we make it an integer? So this one. Well, we would simply put a number. So boom. When you run it, it prints. Oh, my bad, so we have to change this too, so that these are matching, because the error said that since there was a name here before, there was no variable called name. So it says name is not defined, if you understand that. So then when we run this, it prints 10. And now let's say we want to make a list. A list has to be in this exact format, a bracket, and then you can have, let's go over boolean first. So, let's do 10.5. My bad. 10.5, that would be an example of a boolean. So, there it is. The reason there's the reason there's a string, an integer and a boolean is because, sometimes you're just working with whole numbers, and you would use an int. And, because booleans take up, more space. Also, when you print a boolean, then it prints with it always prints with, so let's say you print the number 12. If it's an integer, then it would print 12. But if it's a boolean, it would always print 12.0, unless there's like a number here. Alright. So, yeah. And now a list. This is the most complicated out of these 4. Basically, it has to be in this format, and you could have a string, so it could be Alex, and then you separate it. So each thing that you separate by a comma. Simple enough, right? Then the next thing, it could be a string. So let's say you want 10. I mean an int, sorry. The next thing could be a boolean. So then you have that. And if you print a variable, it'll print this whole thing. So watch. It'll print it just like that. Alright, so that's not too complicated. Now let's talk about combining variables. Let's say you have a variable called name, and you have it set to Alex. Right? Now what happens if you have another variable called number, and you set it to 10? So you would put name. If you print name, that prints Alex. if you put number, that prints 10. But what if you want to print name? What if you want to print both of these? What if you want to make it so that it says this, but not in a string? So you have to call these variables. Well, first of all, you would get rid of the strings, and then you would change the characters for the name of the variable. So the name, and then this one would be number. And you can't do this because then it would think that you're trying to call a variable called name number, and we don't have that. So it's going to give us an error because it's not defined. So we would have to put a little plus sign right between there. So do you think that will work now? If you said yes, you are wrong. Let's see what will happen if we run that. It gives us a different type of error. So what this means over here, and it's always important to look at this and check the line, because when you're writing big programs, you wouldn't know what line it's on. So must be string, not int. That's because, remember, like we went over before, this is a string, but this is an int. So we would have to have the same type of here. So we could make this one a string so that they're both string, or we could make this one an int so that they're both ints. But we can't make this one an int because it's characters, so it wouldn't work. Let's see what would happen if we tried to make that one an int. So how you do that is you basically add that. You put it in parentheses with an int. So, but then it will say operand not something like that. So invalid literal for int with base 10. That's complicated, but basically what it means is since that has characters, you can't make it a number. So then we would get rid of that and put this as a string, so that we now defined that right here as a string. When we run that, it should print Alex 10, and it does. Perfect. Now let's see what would happen if we make this a boolean. It's the same thing. It would run and it would print Alex 10.5. But if you don't, simple, it would not work because they have to be the same, not float. It's called a float when it's like this. It's a boolean, but it's a float. It's two different names. So you could also call it a float. I forgot about that. Which is kind of simpler to pronounce and easier to write. So this is a float because it has a decimal. So it's the same thing, just different name for boolean. Alright. So now I only have a couple more minutes left, so 2 more minutes. So now let's see what would happen if we make, well, we went over these three. What would happen if we tried to make this? So a list. Let's get rid of these two and these also. And let's make the list called, I don't know, variable, just because I'm running short on time. We only have 2 more minutes. So yeah, it's called a variable, and remember the format, it has to be in brackets, and each separate part of the list is separated by commas. So yeah, and let's just say the first part is Alex, and that's the first part. Then the second part is, again, oh whoops, we do not want to do that, it's because it's an int, and then it's a float. Boom, perfect, just like that. So then when we print variable, it will print the variable. Alright, now one thing we didn't go over, which doesn't have anything to do with these, so we can get rid of them, it's just printing stuff. So when we print things, it's always in quotation marks, like when you print instructions. So it's just a string, so it's telling you what to do, like simple instructions like that. So if we want to print something like this, and then we want to print, let's say we have something defined, right? Normally it'd be more complicated than this, but like right now we would do, and this is a string, remember that. Let's say it's, do this, let's just make it now. And you want to add that to here. So you would make a plus sign and then put the name of the variable. No, I'm just going to copy it because I can't write well. There. So now that is that. So it would print instructions do this now without a space because we didn't have a space in here. So boom, just like that. Now we can add a space right there and do boom. Now let's just say we want to do instructions add 10, and then we can change this from a string and we can make it a 10. So again, an error because we can't have, this is a string and this is an int. So to fix that, just going over it again to make sure that you understand, we would make it a string just like this. Perfect. So add 10 and 10. Also, I know I only have 10 more seconds, so I'm gonna make this quick, and I'm gonna go over a little bit over the time, so don't just stay with me here. Let's say this is a 10, right? And let's just get rid of this string. I mean this string here. And let's get rid of, so this is an empty print loop. An empty line, just a print statement, but nothing will happen. Alright, so let's just say we want to add two numbers. So let's say 10, right? We can print 10, but what if we want to add 10 to whatever the variable is here, right? We don't, because let's just say we don't know it. Let's say it's an input from the user. We don't know what this number is, so we want to add this one to this one. We know what this one is, but we don't know what that one is. Get it? So then you would do plus, then instructions. So it would, I spelled that wrong. Alright, so it would go just like this. So it would add this number, and this is an int because it's not in quotation marks. If we did this, then it would give us an error again because they're not the same type. So since they're both ints, it will print 20. If they were both in strings, whoops, my bad, it would go together, but it wouldn't give us 20 because this is a 10 and that's a 10, so it would combine two strings together. It would take a guess. Pause the video now if you want to guess. I'm going to show you the answer in 3, 2, 1. It would print this. Because it's strings, it's combining two separate ones together. But if they're ints, it knows to add the ints up together. What would happen if one of them was, just quickly, don't leave yet, it's almost over. What would happen if let's just say they were both ints again, but let's say we make this a boolean. Do you think they would go together? Do you think it would print an int and plus a boolean, or a float? Do you think it would do an int plus a float? What do you think? It will, because they're both, a float, even though it's a separate type of variable, let's just call it, it's a separate type of variable, but it's under the category of ints because it's a number. So even though this is called an int and this is called a float, they're both numbers, and the program knows that, so it prints them together. And that's how it would work. Simple. And you cannot add lists together. That's complicated. If you really want to try it on your own, go to a website called repel.it. Just search it up in Google, and well, I guess wait for your next lesson. Alright, that's all. Bye.